Hey everybody, I'm often asked about this funny little buzzword that comes into the world of work and also academia or law school or professional school. It's called upskilling. What in the heck is that? Well, let's talk about it. So, upskilling is really a focus on self-directed learning to attain new skills for your career. In other words, continuous learning through training programs and development opportunities that expand an employee's abilities and also minimize those skill gaps. So essentially, what is it? It's professional development, but some people call it upskilling, right? So you come in with the skills and meeting the requirements for your job, but sometimes as your job changes or as the organization changes, it's obvious that new skills are needed, and this emerges, and you go, "Oh, okay, time to get more skillful." Okay, so don't be offended if you are told it's time to upskill. It's very much a compliment, not necessarily a criticism. Think of it as an opportunity to grow and to add more to your resume and become more valuable to your organization. Now, yes, occasionally, let's not, be too strangely optimistic about this. Sometimes upskilling is a way to address those skill gaps and say, oh, this person really doesn't cut it. So let's put them in some training to see if they can get up to speed. And yes, some people feel a little professionally sabotaged in the process because they need to have some kind of evidence to show they're not up to par, and then therefore have, you know, a point to be made for cause for termination and stuff like that. I would say most of the time that doesn't happen. Okay, so again, don't take it as a fishing expedition to get you out of there. It's not usually that way. Most of the time, it's you're a valuable asset. We want to invest in you, and it's frankly easier just to give you some new skills than it is to hire a new person and hope we're getting what we're asking for. So think of it as an investment opportunity. So does your employer enable learning and growth? This would be a good question for an interview. It's kind of a general question, but you can come up with the you version way of asking that question. So this is where you might want to say, can you tell me about your professional development opportunities that you have at your organization? So that, again, is a way to show your investment in continued learning and growth, to show your interest in that, and to show that you have a desire to make a long-term commitment to that organization and to become better and not be satisfied with where you are and want to grow. So employees, think about it this way. Employees are primarily workers rather than learners. So they need targeted learning that translates directly into the work environment. So sometimes we kind of show up to the job and we feel like, okay, I've arrived, that's it, and I'm now done with adulthood. Over. That rarely happens. A lot of people say you're always training and learning and growing for your next promotion or your next responsibility or your next job even. Okay, so everyone is really responsible for their own learning on the job. And this is besides the onboarding process, which is kind of the orientation for new employees, getting you up to speed, getting you settled in the first few weeks of employment. This has to do with continued growth and development even after you're at your company. However, your supervisor should partner with you on a learning or professional development plan that is detailed, well-defined, driven by timelines and results. So again, some supervisors are very proactive about this, others not so much. They don't give evaluations very often. You're kind of wondering where you stand with your boss, and it's very, very frustrating. But even just developing a plan and presenting it to your boss can show your initiative and your organizational skills. It can also show that you've thought out, ways that you can be a better contributor to your organization. So think about it in that way. If your employer does not enable learning and growth and they want you to just come in, do your job, go home at 5, and that doesn't satisfy you, that's kind of a signal that maybe you need to be considering an employer that does. Because I don't know that I'd be satisfied with an employer like that. I love professional development. I love to travel. I love to learn things. Not everybody loves to learn. Some people say, no, I just want to kind of go in, do my job, and go home. And that's really all I want. That's fine. But think about doing that same job over and over again for many, many years. Would you still be saying that same statement? So this is, again, a way to kind of say, what's my next move? Where do I think I want to grow and go? So again, lots of ways to accomplish this, but this last point here, many employers offer micro training, a quick course on a software program, or even just a quick course on a skill like active listening or analytical thinking, or being more effective with your time management, stuff like that. So it's usually training that can be done in just a few hours or just that work day. So micro training often is offered through maybe an online course or a course that's been developed by your human resources department that is one that you can kind of take at your desk. Or you might take it in a room full of other people in some kind of professional development retreat. But micro training is also a good way to upskill, especially if you're trying to add more software to your resume of things you're trying to learn how to do, especially when it comes to things like coding and the internet and building websites and interacting with major systems for finance or billing. That's a big deal. Okay, lastly, I wanted to spend a little bit of time covering the areas in which we grow so that you can kind of have a list to brainstorm from while you're trying to build a professional development plan. So first, does your employer enable learning and growth? So learning occurs in four primary ways. We first call it didactically, by doing, by discourse, and by discovery. So I guess you could really call it the 4Ds, right? We're going to talk about these in detail so you can think about the different opportunities they provide. So these are the four modes. Let's talk about didactics. So didactics are formal training. You're being taught and it's a formal process. So these are things like classroom training, pursuing a degree or a certificate, either internally or externally to your organization. It could be an online course, which we call either on-demand or self-paced. You may know this as asynchronous or synchronous instruction. You also have online courses or programs that are scheduled with a cohort of people. This can also mean things like going through police academy training, or maybe an active shooter course, or defensive driving, right? Or some kind of skill that you need to make deliveries, to increase workplace safety, to operate equipment, right? Or to learn safe cash handling procedures, stuff like that. So you might be doing that with a whole group of people, but it is formalized. And then certainly you have live virtual training such as Zoom, Teams, and I mean, you have things, sometimes departments and groups will go to TEDx talks together and stuff like that. So those are didactical trainings. They're formal trainings where you're there to be trained and be taught. But then we can learn in a lot of other ways, right? So the next way is learning by doing, experiential learning. And this is kind of the kinesthetic learner here. So we can do it in a lot of ways by first using company resources like job aids or reference guides or other support materials. So these are things like cheat sheets that give you codes of things you need to use for your job to document or report on things. I also call this the list of Post-it notes or sticky notes that are taped to your monitor of stuff you need to remember. Systems, passwords, logins, stuff like that. It usually is a company resource. And once you do it enough, you kind of get good at it and it helps. And certainly activities while doing your job, for instance, writing letters or reports, carrying out transactions and the like. So again, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And you kind of also find better ways of doing it. And it's just kind of doing and acquiring the skill by practice and by repetition. You also can learn by doing with, manager feedback. It can be informal or formal. Sorry about the typo. So manager feedback, it can be more of, there's a faster way to do that. Let me show you. Or, hey, there's a better way to do that. Or let me grab this employee and watch that person for a while. And then you can kind of see some tips and tricks as to how to get after it a little better. And then finally, you can also learn by doing by just actually partnering or working with a coach or a mentor. So these are things like, going through your practice interviews with the Career Connection Center, actually getting mentored or coached on your interview skills. Okay, so that's, again, experiential learning where you practice and you get coached and then you try again. So don't underestimate the power of practice. The next one is discourse, right? Social learning through interacting with others. So this is kind of just having those water cooler discussions or those break room conversations, interacting with your team, your manager, your other work colleagues, swapping stories, sharing experiences. So that can be people you immediately work with. It can also be interacting with your professional network, both in person or the online social networks like LinkedIn, Twitter, and the like. So remember, you had a recent assignment where I asked you to identify your professional network and your professional supports, people that maybe are with you daily or in your life very often, and people you could reach out to in a pinch or maybe would be happy to coach you or give you a reference. And those interactions, again, teach us a lot of things as well. And then certainly you can learn through discourse by attending conferences, either in person or virtually. So attending conferences, sometimes you discover people that are in your field doing what you're doing. And I had that happen to me. I was at a conference And I found my unicorn, which means someone that's very rare and hard to find, that was magnificent and wonderful. And I want to hang on to them forever because I feel like I can ask them any question. We have similar jobs, they really get it. And it's really fun to find a unicorn at a conference where you find someone that's doing what you're doing. And it's just really also very nice that you can kind of be very blunt and very honest about your struggles and your challenges at work without feeling like you're telling someone that's going to leak that information to your boss or other people that could create problems for you. So if you can talk to your counterpart at another organization, it kind of depersonalizes the issue for you. And essentially, you can get some good feedback without having to risk your reputation or put yourself in professional jeopardy. So that's another thing that a unicorn is really good for, is to air out those grievances and get suggestions that don't have any repercussions because they're in a totally different employer than you are. However, keep in mind, sometimes it is a small world, and make sure you develop trust and confidence with people before you start sharing really risky information. Lastly, discovery. So this is informal learning through searching and serendipity, the aha moment, right? So we can get this in a lot of ways where we just kind of stumble across it, right? Reading books, blog posts, news articles, news feeds, ebooks, or books abstracts. If you're really interested in going into a certain field, you should be reading about it on a regular basis, learning the jargon, the industry secrets, the challenges ahead, the successes, and the history. You should be doing regular reading on your industry to kind of stay on top of what's going on. This will also be really impressive and easy to share during an interview. The other part is searching the web purposefully to discover something, right? So maybe we are coming across some things we don't quite understand. We want to find more information, so we start doing some very direct searches on it. And then the best part is the last one, browsing the web aimlessly for enjoyment. And we kind of, again, just accidentally find something that is useful. And sometimes we do that through social media as well. We come across an article that was actually really helpful, or a video that really made something clear to you. So again, those are the 4 different modes of workplace learning, and you can include any or all 4 of those in your professional development plan. So this kind of gives you a creative list to work from as you think through this, and I hope you found this video helpful to think about the skills that you can add to your resume and to your professional self even after you've landed that job. So we'll see you next time.